Welcome to Regulate This, an RIA-ly Unfiltered podcast.
How can it be January already? We're back though, guys, and we're so excited. We have one of our team members with us that we couldn't live without, Amber Davis. She is our compliance manager and guru in general. She knows all, and so we're really excited to have her here today to share her experiences and to tell our listeners all of the things that they should know to avoid. What are the pitfalls, the traps, the minefields that they step in that become horror stories?
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, to kick it off, I'm going to talk really quick about people before they become clients. So our PNCs, potential new clients. So Layla and I both have the pleasure of speaking to potential new clients quite frequently. And the one thing that I've seen time and time again is people from brand new startups all the way to 5 billion in AUM tell me the exact same thing. We're vanilla. We're not complex. There's really nothing to our compliance. I think you'll only spend a couple hours a month. And then they go into how many IARs they have. And there's no way they could spend a couple hours a month and actually be doing compliance. And so that's when I usually figure out that they took their favorite assistant or their child or their spouse or somebody that is a glutton for punishment, and they put them in the position of CCO with no training, with no skill, very inadequate to be put in that position. And once they become clients, we peel back the layers of the onion and we find out that they, in fact, were not doing most of the compliance that they're required to do. They were missing the boat on many things or doing it incorrectly and cutting corners. So yes, it took them an hour or two a month to do virtually nothing. And that's also true when they've had other consultants. It's also true when they've, had templates and thought they could do it all on their own. And the template is so outdated, but they don't know because they don't know what they don't know until they find out they don't know it. And that's usually a price tag that comes along with it, a fine or a disclosure that they have to carry to share with every new client or current client and ruin their reputation. It's a real reputation buster. So the first thing is, if you think your compliance is vanilla, ensure that you're actually doing compliance. Then when you become a client, listen to your consultants. Quit trying to do it your way. If your way was the right way, you wouldn't need any support. How about you ladies? What have you seen in clients, past, present, even future people you've talked to at conferences and in the industry that are huge red flares that, Houston, we have a problem?
Let's start with Amber, because I feel like with Amber, she's worked at some pretty big companies. You can find this on her LinkedIn. Like, she worked at Raymond James, right? Like, it's a huge company. And then, through our firm, she's working with small and mid-sized, independent, kind of boutique-y RIAs. So I feel like Amber's seen an assortment of crazy shit, right? Not only from her perspective as someone working at one of these kind of big conglomerate firms, but also just from what she's seen with people we've worked with over the years, whether it's someone we've talked to as a prospect or a client.
Well, thanks, Layla. Starting as little as an advisor, it doesn't even have to be a whole firm. Making sure you're properly registered, and you move a state and you're not registered and you can't do business in that state until you get registered. And then you get some big fine from a state because you thought you told your compliance department, but they never registered you. You never followed up, but you have a standard that you have to uphold as a representative and an advisor, that you have to make sure that you're properly registered so that you can conduct business in that state.
So I think, Amber, you've told me before, some of these firms, some of these larger firms you used to work at, Like your queue of registrations would be sometimes months behind, correct?
Yes, months.
So when we're talking about, like when we're talking to advisors, especially when they come to us after the states find them and they're like, well, I told compliance. Well, if compliance is 2, 3, 4+ months behind on your filing, the burden of proof is really on the advisor, right? Like they're ultimately, according to the regulators, responsible for making sure they are properly registered, even though you're using a third party, your firm, to do the work for you. It's still your responsibility. So what ultimately happens is the state fines the individual, not the firm.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen in the past is actual advisors think that they're being registered by their compliance department or registration department or wherever they're at, and they're not following up on it. And then they just go and do conduct business. And then once the registration department or whoever actually files the registration, they get a deficiency letter. And then they want to know, have you done business in the state? And therefore, if you have, it becomes a problem.
Well, yeah, because then they're like, oh, you've done business. Well, tell me more, right? Like, how many clients have you had in the last 12 months in our state, right? Have you been charging fees? And then once you've surpassed that de minimis exemption, you are fucked.
Even soliciting business. I mean, we've seen it where we've had people come to us that thought they did a registration themselves or didn't register, and we're like, I'm going to do it. Like, well, you know, hand grenades and horseshoes are the only things that close matters. So, you know, they didn't do anything. And then they go and send out advertisements to solicit business because when I'm registered, I want to have the business there and ready for me, right? I need the money to come in. Well, the problem is you can't do that if you're not allowed to be in the state. Now you've got to disclose it. And now you're going to get a fine. So, you know, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot by not understanding the rules of the road before you engage.
Well, and it can kind of blow up from there, right? So especially like state registrants. So if you're registered in multiple states and say Texas, right? You didn't properly register in Texas. So they open an enforcement investigation, they fine you. Well, then if you're registered in other states, let's say Nevada, Utah, New York, they could all individually open up investigations into you as well and hold you responsible for conduct that you manifested in a different state, right? Because in a lot of states, there is kind of this morality clause or morality catch-all language when it comes to your conduct as a financial advisor. So one event can turn into 3, 4, 5 disclosures on your U4. And it's a bit obnoxious. And then it looks really bad because then it's like, holy crap, you have 4 disclosures. And it's like, yes, but it was one event that happened that snowballed out of control and turned into this big nothing burger. But, you know, Amber has seen that with these big firms. I've also seen it with outsourced providers. Like, I remember talking to a prospect years ago. They were using an outsourced provider who was supposed to be registering new people. They were talking to us about registration. And, you know, there's the public-facing side of IRD and broker check. So I like to go in and kind of pull up their record and see what I can see. So with this prospect, I was like, you've been registered with what firm? Oh, firm XYZ. I'm like, you haven't been registered in over 2 years. And they're like, what? I was like, you haven't been actively registered with a firm in over 2 years. So if you've been working with this firm, you're telling me the last 2 years, they never U4'd you. What? And then, so they CC'd me on the email with the consultant and it went sideways fast. So all of a sudden, you know, when they were looking at launching their own firm and getting registered, it's been over 2 years. So your 65 is expired. You'd have to either go through with a waiver request, which every state won't necessarily honor it. And then even if you do so, you've been unregistered during a time in which you've been providing financial advice and portfolio management services, which require licensing and registration to clients in exchange for compensation. So now you've violated state laws. And so the consultant went back and like, oh, we'll backdate it. Honey, you can't backdate registration 2 years. Amber, you spent over 10 years in registrations. Can you backdate registration 2 years?
That you cannot.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was like a whole issue that they had to go get fixed before they could even move forward on launching their own firm. And that put them behind quite a bit of time, all because there's all this trust for your compliance team. But when we talk about compliance being underfunded, not having enough people, not having enough resources, not training, not having people that really care, and it's just like a clock in, clock out type of job, they're not diligent, they're not keeping track. These are the things that happen.
And that actually happens more frequently than you think. I've had a lot of advisors that go to a BD and then they take their 65, but they never register it. And then they don't ask to be registered. I don't know if they think it's just automatically going to happen. And the registration department or compliance department is like, hey, you passed that. Now I'm going to go register you. But a lot of the big firms, they require you to actually do a new contract under their RIA firm to get registered as an IAR. So they're not automatically going to register you. Like, it's the advisor's responsibility to go and make sure that gets filed and, registered.
Well, and especially with hybrid situations, a lot of firms won't hang all your licenses either, right? So if you have multiple licenses, but say the firm you're going to only needs you to have your 7 and 24, they may not hang all your licenses, right? Like, then it's like, okay, well, then you have an issue because then certain of your licenses are affiliated with this firm, but certain of them are not. But hey, let's just blindly trust people, right? I mean, we always talk about compliance is trust, but verify, verify, verify. What else have you seen, Amber? What else have you seen a lot? Or what is it that you've seen come up over and over again? You're like, I cannot believe so many people are making this horrible mistake.
Honestly, I mean, most of the time is registrations that I see. They don't pay attention. They blindly trust their compliance team. Oh, they're not submitting outside business activities either. They go and engage in an outside business activity. They don't tell their firm finds out, and then they can get termed for cause.
Oof.
And if you are registered with a broker-dealer and an RIA firm, and there's separate entities, that's 2 different disclosures, one for the RIA, one for the BD. So now you have 2 termination disclosures, and you go to find a new firm. Well, they're going to want to know more information. So what went on? Why didn't you disclose it? Is it you problem? Is there a pattern?
Well, and a lot of times what I hear from advisors is, well, I talked to my supervisor and I told them what I was doing and they were okay with it. And I'm like, okay, did you follow up in writing? Did you send an email, said, hey, it was great talking to you about my new business that I'm launching that has nothing to do with financial services. Thank you so much for giving me the verbal okay. Just let me know when I should submit to compliance. Oh my God, how many times has that same exact scenario come up where it's like, I talked to my supervisor, I talked to compliance, I talked to supervision, I talked to the CCO, they said it was okay. And it's like, great, did you actually submit the OBA form? Did you actually get the approval in writing? Because these people are humans. They could have been distracted. They could have forgotten they approved it. They could have thought it was okay, and then they go talk to their own supervisor, and the supervisor's like, we don't approve that kind of conduct. And it's like, oh, shit. Well, I guess I'll wait till the advisor submits their OBA form, and then you don't because you thought the verbal okay was enough. And then to Amber's point, we find out, compliance does, that you have an unapproved outside business activity. And now, boom shakalaka, your term for cause, you've got a U5 disclosure. And if you want to get hired by a big firm again, it ain't happening, sweetheart. It ain't happening.
I don't know if either of you have seen this and maybe you can speak to it, but I've had quite a few people that I've spoken to that want to start their business. They want to register. They want to start a fund, just a variety of things, a variety of different types of clients. And the first thing they said is, well, I know my clients will loan me money.
Side note, really funny story. I once had a yoga master start his own fund because he figured out that he actually liked trading in his own account and thought he could do it for other people. These people exist. Oh, God. Yes. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Amber, your thoughts?
So a loan from a client, that's a fat negative.
Why is it a fat negative, Amber? For those who are like, why? Why shouldn't I borrow money? These people know me. They trust me. I've been their financial advisor for 20, 30, 40 years.
Well, let's see. Are you managing their money? What are you going to do? Are you going to pay them back? Are you investing their money still? Are they still a client? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of issues with that. You should not be loaning anything, accepting any kind of money from your clients.
Well, it comes down to conflict of interest, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah.
Okay, you've got this client you've known for a while, and you're looking at their accounts one day. You're like, oh, Amber's got $10 million in her account. And, I'm trying to buy this second home in Sedona because I heard about the energy vortexes there. And I need to energize my crystals. And I need to do my Qigong and get my moves on. I'm going to call up my client here, Amber, who's got 10 million, and be like, can I get a loan for $1 million? Well, should you be managing that account if you're no longer looking at it for the benefit of the client, but rather for your own benefit? Let me go ahead and answer that for you. No. You've now put your interests ahead of your clients, which is a breach of your fiduciary duty, correct? So, loans, there is a way to structure loans from clients. It involves a shit ton of documentation. It potentially involves structuring an investment vehicle of a sort to do it, right? Whether it's in exchange for equity or debt. It could be a one-time loan document. Then it would have to be a formalized document. It makes more sense if the client happens to be a family member, right? It's my dad. But Amber, I'm sure you've seen this. I've even seen it come up when it is daddy giving a loan and it wasn't properly documented and the firm still took issue.
Yeah.
Because daddy was also a client of the firm.
And a lot of firms go on the conservative side, and that is a no. That's a red flag.
Yeah. So for those of you who think, it's a family member, it doesn't count. No, we've seen it where even a loan from a family member has caused issues and has been grounds for termination for some advisors because the loan wasn't disclosed. It was one of I've done a couple consultations with those seeking expungements, and it's like, the loan was from my dad. The loan was from my sister. The loan was, it was from a close family member, and I didn't think I had to disclose that to my firm because it's my dad. It's my sister. It's my grandma. And it's like, yeah, you still have to disclose it. I think this is where people get tripped up. Even if it's not something that has to be disclosed public facing in your ADV2B, in your U4, it may still just need to be disclosed to compliance. So I always say, err on the side of disclosure. It doesn't necessarily mean it goes public facing in your U4 or 2B, but it's just good to keep your firm on alert, put it in writing, and then they'll likely say, oh, it's your dad? Yeah, sure, that's fine. But you want them to say that in writing. I always say a lady's handshake is in writing. So don't do the gentleman's handshake. Do a lady's handshake and then give them a pen to sign, right? Get it in writing.
Definitely. Something I heard you say earlier, Layla, and it really resonated because I've had different people unhinged over the fact that you don't automatically get to just wave into a state because you're licensed or because you want to. And so what is it about some jurisdictions that would prevent people from being waived in to be able to conduct business in that jurisdiction, whether it's SEC or a state jurisdiction?
I think just different, especially at the state level, different jurisdictions take different approaches. Part of it is, for a lot of states, the securities division is part of an office that has electable positions. So oftentimes the position a securities division takes is subject to what political party is ruling in that state. So that's certainly the case in many states. So when you're in like a purple state, right, that kind of wavers between the two political parties, you can sometimes have a shift in how things are handled. So that's a challenge. I think some of it too is just resources. Some states like California, Texas, Florida, New York, they get an overwhelming number of applications for new RIAs, for advisor registrations. They have a ton of firms they're supervising. I mean, New York, for God's sake, said we had so many people in New York who are financial services people. We're only regulating RIAs up to 25 million. The rest of the states regulate up to 100 million. New York's like, we have that many financial services people and companies. We can only regulate up to 25 million. And so then it's a matter of, why should we spend the time to go through a waiver process and review all this information and documentation and do an investigation and make an analysis if we don't have the resources? So there are some states who are like, no, we're not going to grant you a waiver. If you didn't renew on time, if you were out of the business for a couple years, we don't care. Tough shit. Go take the 65 again. Other states, they don't care. You started work in the 60s when you didn't have to take this exam and you've been working continuously. God bless you. You're alive still? Go ahead, get you a waiver. You don't need to take the 65. So it's a bunch of different reasons why different states approach it. I think too, it's the leadership kind of sets the tone too. So you have some states that are super aggressive, super by the book. And, that's where we see more of those enforcement actions. We don't see as much flexibility. We're not seeing kind of as much of that, like, let me help you out. Let me give you that waiver. And I know a lot of advisors complain, but I'm just like, this is a heavily regulated industry. This is the industry you picked. You have an opportunity, almost unlimited upside in terms of personal income. You have almost unlimited upside in terms of how many people you can help to build and leave a legacy behind and be able to support themselves through retirement. It's an awesome industry to be in, but also understand it's heavily regulated. And so you're responsible for knowing what those regulations are.
I think it's interesting because I feel like we're talking about Veruca Salt, from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where she goes, I want it now! And we see so many people that they feel like just because they want it, it's supposed to happen. I've had chats with people that are deciding to leave a firm and open their own RIA, and they'll say, okay, so if I hired you today, could we be up and running next month? And I think to them, have you ever dealt with the government before? Because if so, maybe you have more pull than I do, but once we get to a certain point and we're able to flip it to the regulator, now it's up to them to actually make a decision, right? To come back with deficiencies, to come back with questions. And Veruca Salt wants it now, so they're not properly planning. They assume if I quit today, I can start tomorrow. They're thinking if it's not a big deal, I can just waive it. So there's so many of those predisposed ideas that really aren't going to work for them and are actually going to set them up for failure, especially if money's tight.
Yeah, I think sometimes people come in with some expectations that may be a bit or a lot unreasonable. I know you've seen that, Amber, for sure. Speaking of advisors with unreasonable expectations.
Well, I know when advisors are like transitioning, whether they're going to an established firm or a doing their own RIA, and especially if they're coming from like a Edward Jones or somewhere, right? They didn't have their own office. They don't even think of those things. Oh, I need to go get an office. I don't even have my own computer. It was the firm's computer. I have to go get a new computer. I got to set up a phone line. I need to set up email address. Archiving. I don't even know how to do that. Like, what archiving systems do I use? Who's the best in the industry? Who's going to be in my budget? And then thinking about back to the registrations, like how long is it going to take to register? When can I resign? Do I want my firm to find out? There's a lot that goes into it in planning, and it's not like overnight.
No, but some people, if I feel like when they call us, they woke up that morning and decided.
Oh, for sure. They did.
Today is the day. I'm going to throw the gauntlet down. So I know we have to wrap up here in a minute, but one of the last things that I think we should touch on, because this affects so many people now that technology is so prevalent with all of us, even us dinosaurs, I'll speak for myself, even the dinosaurs in this group, we're people that, have adapted, we've evolved, we text, we do all of those things. And I know you've been, and both of you have been with clients, but Layla, I know too, you have went out on site visits and you've talked to clients. Amber, I know you've, been very vocal with clients that don't understand off-channel communications. They swear that they don't do it. They want us to leave it in their manual that they absolutely do not do it. And remember, the manual is how you tell the regulators you conduct business. This is what we do. This is how we charge fees. This is the way we communicate with clients. These are the types of things we offer. And you're saying we do not do off-channel communications. And then what happens when you actually talk to the people that work for them?
Amber, you want to take that one?
I was texting. I'll tell you, just working at bigger firms, and when this all came out, off-channel communications, sending a text as simple as my computer screen broke, got captured by compliance, shut down. It was like a whole big thing. So people don't realize it's still securities related, it's business related. It's a text between coworkers, but it's securities related. It's in my firm. I'm texting about it. It needs to be captured. It's about the business. Something as stupid as that. People aren't thinking about that, but they're like sending themselves emails to their Gmail account. They're texting, firm-related stuff to their self so they can read it later. But who knows what they're doing with it at home? There's so many things.
Well, Amber, wouldn't they want their personal cell phone to be discoverable in a lawsuit? Come on. Don't they want every picture to be discoverable? Don't they want every email? Every text to be put on display?
Sure, yeah, that's exactly what I would want personally. I want you to see all my videos, all my chats.
But I mean, they really don't, like, especially the thing Amber says about forwarding email. Oh my God. And I will say, we see it more amongst, let's say, the more seasoned advisors. But yeah, if you're forwarding work emails to your Gmail, the question from a regulator is, are you now using your personal email account for business purposes? Are you now taking that email you just forwarded to yourself and responding to the client from your Gmail or your Yahoo, or God forbid if you still have a Hotmail? You know what I mean? But then it's like, if you do it enough, then it's like, well, you know what? We're going to have to archive your personal inbox, since you've been doing that, just to make sure you're not responding out of it. And then we have had situations where it's like, yeah, I forwarded it to myself and I forgot which email account I was in and I accidentally sent it from my personal. And it's just like, oh.
I don't even think it's just personal email. Like, some people have separate emails. They have an insurance OBA and they want a insurance email address just for those insurance clients.
That's a good example, Amber, because that happens a lot. You're right. With those who have multiple lines of business, swapping between like brokerage, insurance, accounting for those people who do tax stuff, and then advisory. Yeah, that's a huge problem.
What about the people that say we don't do text messaging at all, except for that one time I was out to dinner and a client contacted me, and so I just did a quick reply? Because we've all heard that. We've all had somebody that said, no, our firm, no, we don't do, no, we don't do that, because they know that would have to be part of their books and records. They know that they would have to retain all of that stuff, or they need a platform that they can text message from that gets captured. They know that. So they say we don't. And then there's that one advisor in the room that's like, well, does this count?
So I think that, I think the SEC's position now is, for those of you who remember when cell phones came out, I remember, I think it's back then it was like, 3 minutes after 9 and, you don't want to send too many text messages because you're paying by the text. Technology has come such a long way. We all walk around with mini computers in our pockets now. So it's become incredibly convenient, and it's widespread, the use of text messaging, instant messaging, right? When you think about firms that are using like Teams or GChat or other platforms to communicate instantaneously with one another, all of those different communication platforms have to be archived and supervised. But the SEC's position is, listen, it's so prevalent and so widespread. You know, babies are popping out the wombs knowing how to text message these days. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a matter of, you can't say anymore, we don't text message. It's like saying, oh, we don't use email anymore. What? It's so widespread and so prevalent. You can't say we forbid it. You have to have something in place to allow for the capture and supervision of those messages.
Well, ladies, I think we have scared people enough with our horror stories, but there's something great, right? They can go to MyRA Lawyer's website, www.myrialawyer.com. They can look at content that we have on there. They can schedule a consultation and ask us questions. They can go on to Compliance University if they're not ready for a consultant and they want to do it themselves, but they actually want to figure out how to do it. They can do on-demand courses that help them develop a compliance foundation and program within their firms. They can go on our Facebook. They can go on Instagram. They can go on YouTube. There are so many videos on YouTube where Layla is giving you the keys to the kingdom. LinkedIn. Visit Layla on LinkedIn. She has videos that she posts there. Sign up for her newsletter. Join the other 60,000 people that think it's valid and worth it, and they learn something all the time. So you are not alone, my friends. We are here to help.
You are not alone. I mean, I think what I'm taking out of this, and what I've always taken out, especially when Amber jumps into these conversations and she brings her background from these really big firms, is even the big firms don't have their shit together. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people making when they come talk to us is assuming the big firms have their shit together. I went to so-and-so's website and they didn't have this. They didn't do this. They don't do this. They do this kind of business and they're not registered here. They're not registered as that. And it's like, stop assuming, because when you do so, you make an ass out of you and me. Don't think that the bigger the firm, the more they have it together. I promise you, in some cases, they're the worst firms we've seen. Now, in some cases, they're pretty damn good. But in a lot of cases, they are horrible. They have their own challenges. Your challenges don't go away as your firm grows. They just change and evolve. So take it from Amber, who's worked at places big and small. Shit's happening everywhere.
Well, the Northerner will jump in and say, until next time, please check us out wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you're reaching out and finding your podcasts. Remember to find Regulate This.
Bye.